Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's your boy, Delightful Kissboy, and today I figured I'd chime in on the Stop Killing Games discussion. Give my 2 cents, bring more awareness to it, although, I'm not going to be bringing awareness to too many people, because y'all probably know about it already, and if you don't, I'm talking to, less than 3,000 people. But hey, what the hell? Let me yap about it. Who cares? Who cares? But here we go. Let's talk about this. So, Stop Killing Games, as far as I understand, because I was made aware of this pretty recently. To be honest, I was a little late to the game. Didn't really hear about it. Is apparently like an initiative where they're trying to get enough signatures to kind of petition the EU to introduce regulation on the gaming industry to essentially make games going into the future, kind of like the publishers need to take into account end of life, sort of how that's going to look, right? Because as of right now, if you have kind of a live service game, meaning that you're playing on the internet, you're playing on a server or whatever, essentially most publishers can just kind of be like, okay, well, we're not making any money, let's just take it all down, call it a day, and boom, you've lost your access to this game that you maybe paid for. I think the big example that was used as kind of an egregious example of this was The Crew, which was like a game from the early 2010s, I think, like 2014 maybe, that was basically should have been playable, I think, in a single-player mode, but then, the publisher was like, all right, we're shutting down all our servers and we're just going to take it offline, right? And people basically bought the game. They paid $60 for it. There wasn't a subscription associated with it, but then it's like there was literally no part of the game that was playable anymore, which is pretty shitty, Pretty shitty when you take a look at that, right? Now, I don't know, I haven't read the terms of service of that game. Maybe that was communicated that it's like this is all online and we can just pull this down at any time and it's no big deal. We can just strip your access away, even though we're selling this and marketing this as any other game. I think you could even buy it for Xbox, right? I don't know, I think that's it's pretty wild, but they did, they were able to do that, and so that's pretty shitty, right? And so this initiative would also, though, be applying to other games like MMOs and, different games where people are basically paying money. So this wouldn't affect purely free-to-play games, but it would affect games that people are putting money into, whether that be subscriptions or games with microtransactions where you're actually, pumping money into the game. It's basically saying, hey, I think that a lot of the motivation behind the movement is kind of game preservation, right? There are these people who are very passionate about preserving games so that they can be, played into the future in some form, that sort of a thing. But I think it's also kind of a consumer protection sort of standpoint, right? Where it's like, you paid money to get access to these games, and publishers are seemingly able to just kind of take that away from you at any given time, and even though they may disclose that in the terms and services, it's maybe not the practice that we shouldn't be allowing these practices necessarily, right? So that's kind of my understanding of it. I'm not, an expert on it by any means, but that's how I understand it. Now, just from my perspective, okay, I don't have a lot of skin in the game, personally, in terms of just I'm kind of a single player Andy, if I'm being honest here. I've never really been that into multiplayer gaming that much. I like some multiplayer games, like I used to play Halo 3 matchmaking back in the day or whatever. I played a little bit of World of Warcraft when I was younger, that sort of thing. I've played Magic Arena a bit and put some money into that to do drafts, that sort of thing, But overall, talking pretty small potatoes for me. I never got into League. I never played any other MMOs. So once again, I'm not as what should I say? I'm not super invested in these games, right? I personally don't really care too much about the preservation aspect. What I more care about, and I mean, I understand, okay, when I say I don't care about it, right, I totally understand where people are coming from. They put a lot of time into these games, they love these games, they want to see the game preserved. I think overall that is a good goal, you know? So I'm not taking away from that. I'm just saying, me personally, emotionally, I'm not like super invested in that, okay? That's just me. What I'm more invested in is the other side of it, which is basically consumer protection, right? Because I think it's fucking bullshit when you buy something in a game and you get a digital asset and it's disclosed to you in the contract that, you know, this doesn't belong to you or whatever, you know, but that's not how people are thinking of these things at all, you know? They're thinking, hey, I'm buying this thing and I'm getting a thing, regardless of what the terms and services say, this is mine now, right? And you're paying real money for these assets that don't belong to you, right? So whether or not, you know, the publisher can argue, oh, well, you know, these never belong to you. It says right here in the contract, that is not how people are looking at it, right? And I think it's bullshit that they can just take it away from you. Now, you can get banned on these games. I mean, obviously, there needs to be some sort of way to get rid of spammers or people who are, you know, violating terms of service, shit like that. I don't know what that looks like, to be honest, but I'm just saying, like, you can just kind of revoke people's access to this shit that they pay real money for, you know? Without necessarily, like, basically any sort of compensation that would be coming from this, or any sort of way for, you know, somebody to recoup some of their losses, would just be on the, you know, on the publisher to try to stay in the good graces of whoever they are fucking over, right? And so that's what I'm more concerned about. And I think it kind of goes into a broader topic of just, I think, having been in tech, you know, ex-Google employee, ex-other place employee, I think there needs to be a lot more regulation in tech. A lot more regulation in tech. We're just simply at the point, though, where we're kind of getting into there aren't enough politicians who are tech literate to know how to even start regulating these things, and even how you would start to do so, because it's not just, you know, that these companies are able to get away with, you know, predatory microtransactions. We're talking about, I mean, basically every company now is transitioning to this, you know, software as a service model, where you're basically paying for licenses, temporary licenses, and you never actually own any of the software that you are paying for, essentially, right? Now, is there something, you know, inherently wrong with that? You know, not necessarily, right? I mean, I think that there can be positive outcomes that come from this model, you know, where you're kind of getting, you know, more frequent updates, we should say. You know, maybe they're more incentivized to keep the software, you know, top of the line, that sort of a thing. I don't know. You know, I haven't looked at the data. This is kind of anecdotal. But I think it's also, you know, problematic, and not a lot of people like this kind of a model going forward, where you have 50 million monthly fees that are just racking up over time, and you never own anything, and yada, 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 right? There's that sort of shit, but even on top of that, I mean, these tech companies are just giant monopolies at the end of the day, that I think need to be broken up. I mean, essentially what these big tech companies... Sorry, I'm getting on a tangent, but I want to get on my soapbox here for a second, okay? And hopefully this will tie back to my position on stop killing games, okay? But essentially these big tech companies can do whatever the fuck they want, and then whenever a new, smaller startup starts that could, you know, potentially compete with them, they just buy it up, you know? You get these giant mergers that are going on that are thankfully blocked sometimes in the EU. Which is why, you know, Stop Killing Games is targeting the EU, is because basically the United States is doing fuck all to prevent these sorts of things from happening, but the EU actually has some consumer protection stuff in place, you know. You may disagree with it sometimes, but I think at least in the terms of these software companies, I think a lot of it is a good thing, okay? And there needs to be a lot more of it. So they're targeting the EU to basically have a group of countries that are actually going to come together and try to do something to regulate, because here's kind of what happens in the broader software industry, okay? A regulation will get passed in the EU, and they kind of just semi-extend it to everywhere else in the world, because it would be harder for them to basically have multiple stacks of software and services going, different flavors of the same service, you know, in one country versus another. Basically, you know, there's a lot of money that goes into localization and having it, and it's expensive, right? So oftentimes it's going to be less costly to just extend the regulations applied in the EU globally rather than trying to specifically target specific markets. I can tell you from firsthand experience, it is a pain in the ass to have basically locally, like geographically specific regulations. I can tell you that especially with China, for example, there's a lot of exceptions made at a lot of these big tech companies. Not just China, but that was always what I had to deal with. All right, not going to get into details, but it's just like they have different shit going on over there, and you have to treat it very specifically. Okay, but yeah, EU regulations, like there was a thing called GDPR, where essentially like it has to do with people's kind of permission to, or people's rights to their own data, where essentially customers can request that all of their personal data be erased from companies' databases and that sort of shit within like 30 days of request, right? That sort of thing. A lot of these companies do the same thing in the US. Yeah, there you go. Anyway, rambling a bit, but overall, I'm just saying I am on board with Stop Killing Games, because I think it's a step in the right direction where we're talking about consumer protections for video games, you know? I don't think it's as high stakes as a lot of other big tech problems, you know? There's a lot of problems. I mean, there's shit with AI going on right now. I mean, there's these monopolies, there's all this fucking crypto shit. We live in a world where the President of the United States has made his own meme coin, which is fucking... I'm not going to finish that sentence. You draw whatever conclusions you want. Okay? I'll just say that it's unbelievable. There's shit like that going on, you know? It's absolute lunacy, and I cannot wait until we have, some politicians that are a little bit more tech savvy, some lawmakers that are a little more tech savvy, where we can actually start to regulate these industries properly. And a lot of the damage has already been done, is the unfortunate part of this. I mean, it's like, you look at a company like Google, I'm not just bitter because they laid me off, but you start to try to think through in your head of how you're going to break this company up. And it's just like, I don't even know where to start. They have so many acquisitions. They do so many different things, and they basically have a monopoly on advertising, online advertising. Talk about AdSense. It's like, good luck if you're not using it. That sort of thing. They have basically a monopoly on search. They have, So I'm saying that this is a small piece in a broader, I think, problem of lack of tech regulation. And so, yes, anyway, that was a big rambling way of me saying that I am on board with this. I don't necessarily think that, it's realistic to get every live service game going forward to be, like reasonably preserved at the end of life necessarily. I don't know what that looks like, to be honest. I know a lot about server side software and shit, but I've not developed games like that. I would understand that there are... I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure that goes into that sort of thing. I mean, you got the servers, you got like load balancers, you got third-party software, all that kind of shit. And the Ross, the person who's, you know, talked about this, has kind of addressed those sorts of points and saying that if there was regulation going forward, it would incentivize these companies, or basically they would have to find ways to work around this to get basically provide access to the game in some form reasonably at the end of the life cycle of the game. I don't know how feasible that shit is, but I'm just saying, like, I'm on board to start the discussions, because it would be great if that could be the case. You know, I don't know how feasible that is, but what I can tell you is that in my opinion, there definitely needs to be more equitable, basically, laws in place, like specifically for me around microtransactions. Like, I can look at a game like World of Warcraft, and I can understand that it's like, yes, there are servers that are running, they have a monthly fee, you're paying, you know, it's pretty clear to people with World of Warcraft that when they pay $15, where the fuck it is now, and get like, you know, a month of time. They're probably even doing that anymore. I don't know how the monetization works with WoW. I think they have a kind of free-to-play model now, because they have to, because it's fucking ridiculous to charge people that much money to just play the game. But there you go. They have some kind of monthly fee. I'm less concerned about that, because I think it's pretty explicitly clear that's like, okay, well, I have like a month of time to play this game now, and I'm paying for it, and it's obvious that when you stop paying for it, you're going to lose access to it. But what I am more concerned about is, like, when you buy an item in the game, or, like, you know, a mount in the game, there is no recourse if they just shut the fucking game down. I mean, there's people who pump thousands of dollars in these games, and they can just shut the game down. It's like, poof, bye-bye, all your fucking money's gone. You know? It's like, if there is no solution to, like, making the game still playable beyond the point that the game is profitable for the publisher, there should at least be some kind of a payback mechanism, I would imagine, where you get at least a partial amount of what you've spent on in-game assets refunded to you. Because, you know, once again, I understand that in the contract, the fucking fine print, it's like, you don't own this. And personally, I think that buying that sort of shit in these games is stupid a lot of the time for that reason. I mean, also, I don't really give a fuck about having aesthetics in these games. But I'm saying that is not how people are thinking about it, right? And so these sorts of regulations are, you know, supposed to be designed with consumer protection in mind, where it's not just the case where it's like, okay, well, hey, you signed up for this, big whoop. It's like, no, there is such a thing as having reasonable terms, you know? It's not the case that it's not a fucking libertarian wet dream where anything that you put in a contract is just, you know, oh, well, that's what it says in the contract. Now you signed your life away. Have fun. It's like, no, there are regulations on what you can put in these contracts. And in my opinion, the way that microtransactions are set up is fucking bullshit, you know? So that's kind of more the angle that I'm coming in from, right? Is just that sort of a thing, I think is full of bullshit. It's ripe with bullshit. And so I think that supporting this, you know, stop killing games thing is a good first step to get the discussion going, where it's not, you know, basically these publishers have to, they can't pull the same bullshit they've been pulling, you know, even if I don't necessarily, I don't even know if I disagree, I don't know what it looks like in certain cases with this stuff. I think it's a good goal. Like, why wouldn't you support this? You're signing a petition to get the EU to look into this more, and it's like, then you can have experts, industry experts making their points, and you can have legal experts, you know, basically trying to come to some sort of a solution for this thing that's going to be equitable to all. I mean, so I was made aware of this, by the way, because I made that video where I kind of subtweeted Pirate Software. I don't get what his fucking problem with this shit is. I understand some of what he's saying. Like, I understand, like, from my perspective, I do think it's a little bit unrealistic to expect, potentially. I don't know. I don't know about this. It would be great if I'm wrong. It might be a little unrealistic to expect that, like, every MMO going forward, it would be required to essentially release some sort of way to play the game beyond the life cycle of the game. I don't know what that would look like, because I know that there's a lot that goes into it. At the same time, though, like, there have been people who have hosted private World of Warcraft servers, and that's worked out. And World of Warcraft is a big, huge game, So it's possible, for sure. I don't know about all the legality, all that shit. I'm not an expert. I'm not going to claim to be an expert. But I'm saying, like, from my perspective, that's what I'm telling you, is I'm not an expert, and if it was possible, I think that would be a good thing. So I don't understand what all the fucking hostility's about. It's like, just say, okay, well, I'm either for or against it, or what. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know why you'd be against it. I don't know. It's very odd to me how hostile he was to this poor guy who's just trying to get a discussion started. Like, this isn't a proposed bill. This is a petition to get a bill imposed, So anyway, enough about that. I'm not trying to revel in the drama, all that shit. But it was just very strange to me. I think that there are more important topics to discuss in tech regulation, and I think this is a good part of it. It's like, it's something that is getting consumers more invested in this sort of a thing, right? It's saying this shit that's going on in tech with software is fucking bullshit, and we need to start having mechanisms to push back where these companies cannot just, like, fucking drain money from people, It's the same kind of thing when people are talking about how much fucking money Valve makes off of, illegal gambling, and how they basically, it's great for them. I think CoffeeZilla made a video about that. It's all part of the same sort of thing, where there are these big companies aren't held to account. And they don't have to have any kind of regard for the consumer, and they can basically get away with whatever the fuck they want to right now. And it's ridiculous. So, yeah, stop killing games. If you're in the EU, please sign the petition. I'll leave a link in the description. I mean, obviously, look more into it yourself. I'm not an expert on it. But just from what I understand, it seems like a no-brainer. Yeah, we need more regulation in games. We need more regulation in tech in general. It's things are going to get things need to get better in tech. That's all I'm going to say. I can tell you off the record when I was working at nameless company A that there would be these interesting discussions that I would have with higher ups in the company, and I would hear them throwing around terms like, like saying things like, "Oh, we have an old-fashioned oil monopoly." That is pretty much a direct quote from my Skips manager when I was working at Company A, which will remain nameless for obvious reasons. But it's like, that's how these people are looking at it. It's they don't say that publicly, obviously, but that's how they're looking at it, and it's true. These companies have fucking monopolies, and they can call the shots on whatever the fuck they want. And it's a problem. I mean, that's social media that's just run by fucking weirdos like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. Like, what the fuck is going on? You know what I mean? So, yes, I support basically any form of regulation at this point on any industry with, any tech industry with bullshit like microtransactions going on, where they're just basically getting away scot-free and not being held to account when, they can just pull service from anybody. It's fucking bullshit. So, there you go. Let me know what you think in the comments. That's just my 2 cents. This is more of kind of a broader discussion about tech regulation in general, but, once again, as a tech guy, I can tell you, it needs to happen. It needs to happen. So, I'll link to the petition down below in the description. Take a look if you want. Yeah, so peace out, y'all. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.